Hello, my loves. It's Ashley Janae, and today I wanted to come and teach/talk a little bit about ADHD and how it commonly presents in women and girls. So, I shared on my previous video that I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 35, so last year, and that the diagnosis and the revelation of this being what I was struggling with was really eye opening and life changing. And not in the sense that it gives me an excuse for some of the things I struggle with, which I think is the common misconception from people who do not understand or can't relate to the plight of someone who is struggling with ADHD, dyslexia, autism, or any of the other neurodiverse conditions. But more so, it provided a framework to understand why certain things that I had struggled with, why certain patterns or tendencies that I had, why they existed, why they were so hard for me, why I seemed to have a harder time with certain things than maybe other friends that I had around me or other people, and why I would struggle to overcome some of these issues and could never seem to do it. And it's not to say that it's impossible, but I think awareness is the first step. So once you understand what you're dealing with, then that can lead to a new level of introspection. And then from that introspection, you can start to solve the problem. You can start to seek out appropriate resources and support. And one of the biggest things is you can stop being hard on yourself. You can understand why something is a struggle for you, that there's a legitimate reason, that it's not because you're careless or you're dumb or you're ditzy or, you're just forgetful or a bad student, a bad employee, a bad friend, or whatever. That there's a legitimate reason why certain things are harder for you. And then you can seek out the appropriate support and answers because, at the end of the day, the world is not necessarily built for people who have disabilities or may think or their brain operates a little differently. So, we kind of have to adapt and figure out ways of still achieving our objectives and getting things done and having successful relationships. But the first step is understanding what you're dealing with. And then from there, then you can figure out a strategy and a plan. So I have a lot of notes because I didn't want to come on here and forget anything. So I'm going to glance at the notes just to kind of jog my memory of some things that I wanted to make sure I touched on. I have done, like I said, lots of research, including reading, watching videos, talking to experts, to learn more about ADHD and how it impacts women and girls specifically, because it does present differently in boys and men than it does in women and girls. And in women and girls, it often is detected much later in life. So I heard an expert say that ADHD is typically diagnosed around, or at least suspected, around the age of maybe 7 for young boys. But for girls, it may be picked up around the age of 12 more typically. So, not to say that the girls don't have it when they're much younger, it's just a little harder to detect. And this is because when studies were initially done on ADHD, boys were who they primarily were researching and observing, not girls. So research was far more advanced in terms of how it looks when boys have ADHD. And, the stereotypical can't sit still in class, hyper, bouncing all over the walls, speaking out of turn, can't stand in line, disrupting class, that whole, stereotype of what ADHD looks like. But over the years, we've discovered that it looks different in girls, that the chaos that is normally expressed outwardly with boys tends to be more mental and internal with girls and women. And because girls and women are often more likely to mask those symptoms and try to hide them and appear like they're not struggling, like everything's fine, it can be harder to pinpoint that that's what's going on with the girl or the young woman or even older woman until much later in life and after she struggled for quite a while. So I know there's an increasing number of grown women who are getting diagnosed now who have had these struggles for many many years of their lives. And I know I was one, and I was actually a pretty good student. However, looking back, I see that I definitely exhibited those traits, the traits, some of which I'm going to talk about today, very early on. Um, but I didn't vocalize them. I didn't go tell my mom. I didn't tell my teachers. I didn't know that other people weren't struggling with it too. So I didn't know that it was out of the ordinary. And I blamed myself. I was hard on myself for why I couldn't do better, why I kept struggling with the same things. I definitely felt the weight of not performing up to other people's standards, like in relationships or, even at work sometimes where I would make careless mistakes or forget certain things. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'm starting to already talk about some of the stuff that's going to be on the list. But bottom line is, I believe awareness and knowledge is power. Knowledge is beneficial for you to know that you're not abnormal, you're not alone, that maybe your experience, though you thought maybe you were the only person going through it, or no one around you understood that there are people out there who understand, who get it, who were living the same experience, maybe not in your household or maybe not in your friend group, but there are people out there having the same experience you were having and who also felt alone. And one great thing about the internet is it allows us to connect with each other and to, like I said, build a support system, to find resources and gain access to tips and tricks and even medical interventions if necessary, like medication or therapy and things like that to help you cope, to help you, have the highest quality of life possible. So without further ado, let me jump into some of these signs of ADHD in girls and women. And some of these are actually from a list that I wrote when I was first meeting with a provider to ask to be assessed for ADHD. So I'll speak about that really quick just before I jump into it because I don't want to forget at the end. If you feel like after watching this video, or maybe you've been thinking it, that you might have ADHD or dyslexia or autism or some sort of neurodiverse disorder, I would recommend, it really depends on your insurance. If you have an HMO, you want to start with your PCP because you're going to need a referral. So most likely you're going to need a referral. So I would suggest going to your PCP. Let me adjust the camera here. It's a little bit crooked. Okay, go to your PCP, express your concerns to them, and ask for a referral for mental health and say, that you want to be evaluated. I recommend that you go in prepared. So have your list of the symptoms that you've been experiencing to kind of support why they would be making the referral. Have that when you do go see the specialist. Likely you'll be referred to someone who can make the official diagnosis for you. The person I saw was a nurse practitioner, and it was actually via telehealth. They assessed me via 2 telehealth appointments. The first was just an initial. The second was if I wanted medication, we needed to do an appointment to discuss medication options and dosage and, side effects and all that stuff. Um, and then I actually recently did a TOVA test. So now I don't know about in your state, but now they actually do require you to take an actual test. The one I took was called TOVA. It was computerized. It was about 20 minutes. Measures various different things as far as your attention span and things like that. But it was required in order to be prescribed any sort of stimulant medication to treat ADHD. If you're wanting to be assessed for autism or dyslexia, psychologists can do this. I actually had my son evaluated, and it was done through his school. So if you're not in school, again, reach out to your PCP if you need referrals for mental health evaluations. If not, then maybe call your insurance or check your directory. See if you can find someone who specializes in diagnosing autism, dyslexia, ADHD, psychological evaluations. Do a Google search and see who accepts your insurance. It was covered, by insurance. It depends, how much you'll have to pay based on the type of plan you have. If you have high deductible or you have a PPO and you can self-refer, it's a little bit different. But I would suggest starting with your PCP and go from there. They should be able to connect you with someone in their network who can assess you and have you go from there. Okay, so one of the first things that I brought to my provider was that I was having difficulty focusing. And this means in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a meeting, really at any point in the day, I could space out. I could be, in the moment doing one thing, but find myself with my brain thinking about something completely different. So kind of like you're here, but you're not here. You're spaced out, you're daydreaming, you're not really present, and you can't really control when that happens. So sometimes it would be like while I was trying to watch a movie or while I was trying to watch a YouTube video and the video's been on for 20 seconds and I'm already spacing out. Or I want to listen to the person talking to me, but I find myself spacing out. If, they've been talking for a while, or even if they haven't been talking for a while, and it's not intentional, it's not I'm bored with this, it's really like I'm having a hard time just focusing in on one thing, because I feel like, it's chaos in my mind, my thoughts are racing, I'm thinking about something I don't want to forget, something that happened yesterday, something I still need to do. Random thoughts, questions, songs would pop into my mind, and it would get to the point where it was intrusive. I would have to read and reread selections or pages. If I was reading, I would have to rewind movies, videos, things like that. I'd miss parts of conversations because I was daydreaming. So, and I keep adjusting my glasses. Y'all forgive me. I don't normally do that all day, but I find for whatever reason when I'm filming, I constantly have to adjust my glasses. So another thing that I listed was having a hard time completing tasks. So good for starting something, like say I want to redecorate my bathroom, or I want to hang pictures, or I decide I want to organize my closet, or go through my inbox and clean out all the junk and, declutter, or whatever, just anything, any project that you're thinking of. And it doesn't even have to be a project. Sometimes it could just be an everyday task, like when it's time to wash the dishes or it's time to do laundry. Having a hard time just sticking with that from beginning to end. I would find myself starting to wash the dishes and then having a thought that, oh, I should throw a load of laundry in so the laundry can be washing while I'm doing the dishes. So I go upstairs to grab the laundry, and then before you know it, I'm grabbing cups, and I'm like, I need to take these cups down to the sink so that I can remember to wash them. And then, oh, the trash needs to go out too. And oh, did I feed the dogs? Oh, I need to plug my phone in so it can charge. And by then, I've gone 4, 5, and 6 paces away from my original purpose coming upstairs. So I've forgotten why I came upstairs. I've gotten off task, and I've still left the dishes half washed. There are times I'll go back and complete the task, but there's also times where I won't. And I was also notorious for having a million tabs open on my computer, a million emails open in Outlook when I'm working that I've started to type, and maybe I needed to look up something or I needed to ask someone a question before I could actually complete the email. Or maybe I completed the email, but for some reason I was apprehensive to send it because I want to double check, make sure that I didn't misstate anything, make sure I didn't forget anything or make a careless mistake, or that it's being sent to the right person. And if you think about it, this is a lot of mental energy you're expending to try to not make a mistake, to try to remember everything, to try to stay on task. And again, it doesn't take a lot to become distracted. And before you know it, you're just expending all this energy on just trying to do everyday stuff, just trying to clean your house or get your job done. So that was one of my complaints. Lacking motivation was another one. And this can kind of show up looking like depression sometimes. So, lacking motivation to get dressed, lacking motivation to go to the gym. If you keep saying, I want to go work out, I want to go to the gym, I want to start gardening, or I want to go to the movies to see this movie, and there's really nothing stopping you but your own motivation. I want to do my makeup tomorrow and curl my hair, or I want to go out to dinner with my girlfriends, even fun things, struggling to find the motivation to do it. Definitely struggling to find motivation to complete tasks that either require a lot of mental energy or that are going to be unpleasant or that you think are going to be unpleasant. So sometimes that could be making a phone call to handle some business, organizing something, and you're going to have to make a lot of decisions. It could also be something that's, not generally fun, like doing your budget or paying bills, or what's another thing, that I would put off? Unpleasant conversations, things like that. You can constantly find a way to procrastinate, to put them off, lacking motivation, even though you need to do it. And of course, that has consequences because sometimes you put it off too long, and then, you may not have the opportunity to do it. I know one thing I would find myself doing is if there was a sale or something that I wanted to purchase and I had to make a decision on, okay, I'm only going to spend this much money, so I need to decide, do I want to get this or this? And then if I do, in what colors? And then what size should I buy? Because I'm not really sure what size I wear. Should I buy both sizes and then return one? Or should I just go for the bigger size and hope that it works? Or should I go for the smaller size and hope that, if I'm successful in losing weight, that I'll fit into it if it's a little tight? All these questions popping up in my mind felt like it was going to be a lot of work. And this is even just to buy something that I wanted to buy. And that would cause me to put it off, to say, you know what, I can't think about that right now. I have other stuff to take care of. I'll come back and finish the shopping. And sometimes I'd wait too long and the sale would be over. Kohl's was a site that definitely hurt my feelings because Kohl's sales, I'm in California, Kohl's sales end at 10 p.m. PST. So I think they go by Central Standard Time or Mountain. And I didn't know that initially. So I thought, okay, my Kohl's cash expires on this day and I have until midnight. Well, joke's on me. No, I didn't have until midnight. I had until 10 p.m. So, yeah, definitely after a couple bad experiences, you learn and you try to do things differently, but that doesn't take away the heaviness of the decision making and the mental fatigue that you can experience when you need to make a decision or analyze something or put a lot of thought or mental effort into stuff. I talked about procrastination and why. I talked about jumping from task to task, and running late was another one that was big for me. I actually had a friend a long time ago who, she told me that her parents taught her that, if you're running late, you don't respect the other person's time. I struggled with running late since I was a child. I used to be late for school, walking to school every day. Then as I got older and was an adult, I was late to work. I was late picking my son up from school or daycare when he was a baby. I'd be late to job interviews. I'd be late to um, like gatherings or social engagements. If I was meeting a friend for lunch or whatever, I'd be late to church. I'd be late to places that I really didn't want to be late to. And we're talking, maybe a minute or two, all the way up to, um, depending on how far away it was, depending on how behind I was running, how much I underestimated how long it would take me to get ready or to get where I needed to go. Um, I could be 30 minutes, could be, an hour. It wasn't typically that late. It was normally like, between a couple minutes and 30 minutes, like I said, depending. And I feel like it's gotten better, over time. The more aware I became, I always knew it was a problem and I always hated it. I hated walking in late. I hated the attention being on me and, being shamed because that's generally frowned upon, not being prompt or punctual. But I really, really struggled with it. And it wasn't even something I could fix by waking up earlier or starting to get ready sooner because that wasn't the problem. It wasn't that I was waking up late. It wasn't that I didn't have enough time to get ready. It was lacking the motivation to get up and start when I needed to. It's almost like I couldn't even get motivated to focus on getting ready and getting out of the door until I was running late. And then also underestimating the time it took to get ready. So I may think in my head, oh, it'll take me 15 minutes to do my makeup or curl my hair or whatever, just using that as an example. And it may take 20 minutes, and just that 5 minutes throws me off. So, I end up being 5 minutes late because I've timed it right to the T, that I'm going to arrive right on time. And even trying to add a little bit of a buffer or a window and say, well, let me try to arrive 10 minutes early. It wouldn't work out. And it's hard to explain to people. I'm sure hard for people who don't have that same issue to understand, but let me know if you do. Let me know if you've struggled with that as well, where it didn't matter if you had to be to work at 8 and you woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and work was 15 minutes away, like you still found yourself getting there late. Still trying to pack in too much in that short amount of time, like, oh, I have time to mop the floor and I have time to, I feel motivated to get the dishes done instead of just getting ready and only getting ready and getting out the door by a certain time. I've now overshot or overestimated what I can get done in this amount of time, and now I'm rushing and running late, and now I have that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach because I hate that I'm going to be late. I hate that I have to, slink in and sit down at my desk and hope that I'm not noticed, or if there's a late fee because I'm going to arrive late, or if I have to give an excuse why I'm late. Just knowing that you have to deal with that, there's definitely a lot of consequences, and I really struggled with that for a long time and sometimes still do. So that's another example. Overwhelm and anxiety. And I think the overwhelm again comes from there being so much going on in your mind, so many thoughts, so many things you're trying to not forget, trying to remember to do, details. I have notebooks that I use to write things down, but you also have to remember to look back at the notebooks. And then I can look at the notebook and remember to do something, but get distracted on the way to do that thing. And then, before you know it, again, it's a struggle. So feeling overwhelmed when there's just a lot to juggle. I remember telling friends of mine that I had a 3 errand limit, that I could not go run more than 3 errands at a time. So if I had to stop by the grocery store and the post office and the bank, then that was the 3 that I had to go home after that. I couldn't handle doing any more, that I just felt overstimulated and it was just too much. And overwhelm can feel like you just want to shut down. It can feel like you're frazzled. You don't really know where to go, what to do, where to start, how to make sense of what's in front of you. You're overstimulated. You feel like you need a break, you need a timeout. So that's, how it would feel. Anxiety, kind of goes hand in hand with that. Um, just feeling anxious, worried, rushed, and hurried, but internally um, concerned, like I couldn't relax, I couldn't wind down when it was time to do so. Always feeling like, is there something I'm forgetting, something I need to be doing, somewhere I need to be? Um, that I have so much to do. How am I going to get it all done? Um, I don't want to forget anything. So just like a constant level of anxiety and not feeling calm. Um, Forgetting things and misplacing things. So, you know, even simple stuff like, you had a pen, you were going to take the pen into the other room, you set the pen down, have no idea where the pen's at now. And this just happened like 2 seconds ago. Or even major things like losing your keys, losing your glasses. And, everybody misplaces things, but if you find this is kind of chronic for you, or, whenever it's time to leave the house, you're always looking for your keys or your purse or your jacket, or, where did you kick your shoes off at? Um, that can be a sign that, you're having trouble focusing when you are carrying out these tasks, that you're not able to be fully tuned in and present and intentional about, let me hang my keys where they go. Let me put my Stanley cup where I'm going to be able to find it in the morning. Let me not just throw mail here or my debit card here, or just, leave things in random places and then struggle to find them later. Um, I talked a little bit about difficulty relaxing and how that kind of ties in with anxiety. So just kind of like being a busybody, always got to go, 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 always working on something. And that's in the day-to-day stuff. But then also I found that, I was in school for a long time. So I was in undergrad. I had a child at 18. So I became a mom very young. And I still went to school, but it took me about twice as long to finish for various reasons. I was always in school, but um, it just took me a while. I went to a few different schools because I had to go online and I was working full time, and I kind of had to find a schedule that would work for me and allow me to be a mom and be present with my son and then also work. So, yeah, it took me about twice as long to get my bachelor's degree, and then I went to school and got my master's degree. And um, once I got my master's, then I started to go back for a second master's, and then I realized I really didn't need it. It wasn't going to help me further my career any. I was doing it because I thought it would be easy, but turns out it wasn't. And I was overwhelmed, and frankly, I was burnt out of school. I really couldn't find the motivation to get the work done the way I had for the probably 8 to 10 years prior that I had been in school. So, but then it's like you always need to be working on something. If you're not in school, then you're trying to climb the career ladder. If you're not trying to climb the career ladder, you're trying to buy a house, you're trying to fix your credit, you're trying to start a business, you're always trying to do something. Like you can't enjoy rest, downtime, not having your hands in something. And I think to a degree, that's okay. It's healthy for you to be ambitious and, to like to stay busy and to always have goals. But you can also, like I said, get into the realm of being a busybody. And that's because your mind's so chaotic, you don't know how to relax. You don't really understand that there's a time and a season for everything, and that there is a season for rest. There is a season for maybe just focusing in on self-care, focusing on family, focusing on fun, and decompressing and, all of that, and not overloading yourself and just constantly working on something. I had difficulty not multitasking, so that's something I touched on a little bit. So constantly working on more than one thing at a time. Feeling like I was trying to be efficient, but like I said, sometimes I'd forget to go back and complete some of the stuff that I'd started. But, burning the candle at both ends. Lack of organization, so my desk would be a mess. most times I would kind of know where things were or where I left them, but I would want it to be neat. I would want to keep my desk orderly and my papers and everything organized. I'd find myself wanting to keep everything because I felt like, well, what if I need this? What if I find myself looking for it later? Or what if I need this information? Or maybe something sentimental to me and I don't want to throw it away? Or just finding it difficult to keep things organized and orderly and not have a bunch of stuff everywhere. Definitely have struggled, always struggled with that, just having a bunch of stuff. And even if you organize it and buy bins and containers and organizers and things that are cool that seem like it would help you kind of make your space tidier, if you still just have too much stuff, it's like you put the stuff in all these places, but it's still overwhelming. It's just now, you found cute little places to hide it. So, yeah, just struggling to not have chaos reflected in your environment. I actually keep a pretty clean car, but I'll tell you, my closet is a mess. And my bedroom, I would love for it to be cleaner, but again, I have to kind of get rid of stuff. And that can be difficult because that's, making a decision and finding the time and actually carrying it out. Sometimes I've started and not finished, going through stuff. So, anywho, avoiding tasks and delaying tasks I don't feel motivated to do. I talked about that. Trouble making decisions. I talked about that, the decision fatigue, ruminating thoughts. So that's, where the thoughts are like on a loop. You can't seem to get it out of your brain. When you're laying awake at night and you're thinking about work, or you're constantly fixated on one thing. They talk about, one component of ADHD is hyperfocus. So I'll find, like, lately my fixation has been on, and this has been for several months, Raisinets. Like, for some reason, I went to the movies, had Raisinets, haven't stopped eating them since. And that was when Bad Boys 4 was in theaters. So it's been months, and I eat Raisinets pretty much every day since then. So these weird hyperfixations, and it can happen, really with anything that catches your interest. It doesn't even have to be something you knew you liked or intentional. And it's not to say I have ruminating thoughts about Raisinets, but ruminating thoughts like if there's a problem that you're trying to solve and you just can't let it go. If there's someone that you're thinking about, if you're in a relationship and say a guy's ghosted you and you really liked him and you can't stop thinking about him, or you and your friend had a fight and your mind can't rest, you can't let it go, you keep thinking about the fight and what you should have said and what she said and how could she do this, and keep analyzing it and breaking it down, and again, your mind is hyperactive and won't even let you rest and won't let you drop it. And the minute you go to sleep and wake up, it's like your brain goes back into, you were thinking about something, you were supposed to be upset about something, and oh, there it goes. So it's like you can't really even get mental rest. And overthinking, which can lead to irritability for sure, because excuse me, when you're overthinking, you are like breaking something down in an effort to solve it, filling in the blanks, trying to find answers where maybe there aren't any answers to be found right now. Or maybe you analyzing it is not going to reveal the answers because it involves someone else and you don't have their side of things. Or it's not a problem that you can solve just with sheer intellect. But you tend to overcomplicate things. Maybe you, like I said, fill in the blanks, tend to tell yourself stories about what people meant by something they said or did. What was the motivation behind it? What's going to happen if A, B, or C occur? And before you know it, you've gone off on a whole tangent, on a possible outcome of a situation, you're stressed out and you're worrying yourself about it, and it turns out it doesn't even go that way. You talk to the person and they weren't even mad, or you thought your boss was going to say something to you, or you thought a meeting was going to be about one thing and it turns out it's not even what you thought, but you got yourself so worked up about the potential negative outcome to the point where you stressed yourself out and you got a stomach ache, and you couldn't sleep the night before and all of that. Like, if you find stuff like that happening often, again, I think that's an indication of where your mind and your mental state are at. Irritability, I would definitely experience this when my hormones would fluctuate, especially, my husband will tell you that I definitely get PMS, and that I definitely am more irritable and more, I find, angry around that time of the month. So hormones definitely play a role in your mental health, and can exacerbate certain symptoms of ADHD and other conditions. But just when you have this constant noise in your head and you're always expending so much energy trying to decipher what's going on, what's important, what you need to pay attention to, struggling to try to pay attention to certain things, but having a hard time doing so, having intrusive thoughts, putting pressure on yourself to get things done, or, wishing that you weren't having such a hard time, that can, again, wear on you. And when your energy gets low, you get irritable. People who have chronic pain, they talk about, how it ultimately affects their mood because they're always in pain. When you're in a constant struggle, your energy reserves are depleted, mentally and physically at some point, and you run out of patience for people, situations, for yourself. You can just find yourself really quick to anger, or quick to, even if you don't express the anger, to get frustrated and upset internally. Chasing dopamine was another. So when you have ADHD, it is said that studies have revealed that oftentimes you are deficient in dopamine, or the dopamine that you have is not working as efficiently as it should. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and when it's not working efficiently, or when you are deficient in it, meaning you don't have or produce enough, you will seek out what dopamine does for you, that hit of energy, through different things that bring rewards. So dopamine is connected to your reward system. Examples of this would be shopping and you found a really good sale. So you're getting a great deal on something, you get this instant rush. It's a reward. You're like, great, I've done good. Another example would be food. So sugar, food that tastes good, you get a rush thinking about it, like, yeah, I can't wait to go to my favorite restaurant, or I just baked a whole batch of cookies, or I'm gonna have my favorite Haagen-Dazs tonight, or me with the Raisinets. Instant dopamine hit, instant reward. Dopamine also impacts your motivation and your movement. So one great way, to get that itch scratched when it comes to getting more of a dopamine hit could be you going to the gym, or you achieving a new milestone, like in your workout, or in a task that you want to complete. So I actually read a book that suggested you can create ways to get dopamine hits by challenging yourself, like saying, I wonder if I can get this done in the next 5 minutes, and then setting a timer, and then you're racing against the clock. And if you achieve it, then you've just created a reward for yourself. So yay, dopamine hit. Challenging yourself to complete things that you need to complete, and then, celebrating or, rewarding yourself for completing that can create a dopamine hit. Like, I'm going to get this paper written and then I'm going to take myself out for a mani-pedi, or, whatever, you choose to create. But it's heavily tied to your rewards and your motivation system. So when you are deficient in that, you're constantly searching for ways to get that hit. And sometimes the things you do are not necessarily the best. Some people, they are not just getting that dopamine hit, but um, it's also a form of like self-medicating, like with the overeating or the eating a lot of sugar. You definitely see addictions when it comes to like alcohol, drugs, self-medicating in other ways. Even gambling, is an addiction. And funny story, not really funny story, but there's a study done that showed that you get a greater dopamine hit when rewards are intermittent than when they're constant. So that is one reason why slot machines or gambling in general gets such a strong hold on people. Is it's more thrilling when you don't know when you're going to win, but you're waiting for it to come, versus when you win every time, when it's guaranteed. It's just more exciting. So there was an experiment done with these mice where they would give the mice a button, and if the mouse pressed the button, he'd get a piece of cheese. And he pressed the button, he'd get a piece of cheese. And so the mouse learned to associate, I press this button, I get cheese. Well, then they started not giving the mouse cheese. So they would press the button, no cheese, 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 and then press it the fifth time, and then there was cheese. And the mice's dopamine levels rose higher when the rewards were intermittent than they rose when the cheese was constantly given each time, because that unpredictability motivated them to work harder. And I'm going to tie this into my favorite subject, which is relationships, and how relationships where the rewards or the consistency is intermittent can actually get us addicted to them, similarly to how someone gets addicted to gambling. So, but we'll save that for another time. What else did I have? Difficulty with med compliance. So again, this is like sticking to a routine, remembering to take your medication, taking it at the same time every day can sometimes be a challenge, even if you try to set up a routine for yourself, even if you have a pill organizer, even if you put it on your nightstand or your kitchen counter next to your toothbrush. It can still be a struggle. And one thing about that is, if you're supposed to be taking a medication for a health problem that you have, or if you've just committed to taking a supplement, or even if you're taking your ADHD medication, it doesn't work if you don't take it. So you can become your own worst enemy if you struggle with sticking with the script, doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, but you're forgetful, but you get sidetracked. So you really have to be, like, again, expending a lot of energy into self-governing and making sure that you don't forget, and making sure that as soon as you think about it, you do it, you drop everything and do it, and creating systems, alarms, reminders, whatever it is going to take for you to stay on top of what you need to do. So that was my list of stuff that I took to my provider. Some notes I took just from other research is chronic mental health issues can be another sign of ADHD. So again, I talked about depression and anxiety can often result from unmanaged and undiagnosed ADHD. So a lot of women who've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety may, if they find they relate to, a significant amount of the symptoms described with ADHD, they may be interconnected. So it may be that You're treating the depression and the anxiety, but not the ADHD. And it continues because the root cause is the ADHD. And once you treat the ADHD, then you'll find that your depression and anxiety decreases, or that you don't need medication, or that you need less medication, or maybe you don't. Everyone's different, but it's worth looking into, especially if it's been chronic. Um, Also, a lot of people who have one mental health condition find that they have co occurring conditions. So you may have ADHD and OCD, or ADHD and anxiety, ADHD and depression. You may have OCD and PTSD, or you may have an eating disorder and depression. So, all of these are examples of, diagnosable mental health disorders. And again, the studies have shown that if you have one, you're more likely to have more than one at the same time co-occurring. So that's another indication that you want to look into understanding everything you might be dealing with. Maybe you have just one diagnosed, but you may have some others that you haven't explored. And again, a lot of times, if you're an adult, unless you find yourself, being involuntarily committed, or you've done something very out of character or that's alarming or unsafe, you're going to have to be the initiator to getting yourself evaluated. You're going to have to self-report and go to your healthcare provider, or ask for a referral to a mental health provider to get evaluated for these things. It's not something that is going to be picked up on a blood test by your PCP at your annual exam, or they do generally, I believe, do like a depression screening, but again, that's not super in depth. It's not checking for dyslexia, it's not checking for autism, it's not checking for ADHD. So you're going to have to educate yourself and become your own advocate when it comes to your mental health, and making sure that you're evaluated and treated for anything you might have. Appearing ditzy or socially awkward is another symptom. So just feeling uncomfortable in crowds, around a lot of people, making silly, careless mistakes. Like you trip while you're walking, or you don't know what to say. You have trouble with eye contact. You have trouble, like I said, knowing what to say in social settings. So you find yourself practicing what you're going to say or thinking about it way ahead of time. Just generally being uncomfortable in social settings, especially when it's with people you don't know, or it's a large group of people. And it's an environment that you can become easily overstimulated in. So maybe you don't like parties. Maybe you don't like public speaking. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like public speaking, but maybe it really, really freaks you out, to the point where, you have anxiety, or you go into freeze or shut down, or, it's traumatic, and you do something you don't want to do, and it's almost like you don't have control over yourself, at that point. You say something crazy, you overshare, you just have a hard time, like I said, staying present, being relaxed, and being in the moment in those situations. Chronic relationship issues is another sign. And again, I'm going to tie this into my overarching area that I coach in and that I'm most interested in, which is how our relationships are impacted by our mental health. And especially if you are a woman who's neurodivergent, or who's dealing with a mental health issue, how that affects how you view relationships, how you show up in relationships, how you assess partners, the worth you assign yourself, the amount of effort you are accustomed to putting into relationships. So you have a hard time making friends and keeping friends. You have a hard time meeting men that you're interested in, or partners you're interested in, and maintaining those relationships. Like the issues are chronic, and it's been going on your whole life, and you just can't seem to find and stay in something healthy. Constant conflict, or it's unrequited. So you're the chaser and they're the runner. So, you're always trying to convince somebody to stay or to love you or to work harder to be with you or to appreciate you, and you struggle to, feel that sense of worth within yourself. Um, because that's another thing, having unmanaged ADHD or any sort of mental health issue can do is also lower your self-esteem. So um, when you don't know that that's what you're dealing with, and when you haven't figured out how to manage it, it's easy to blame yourself and figure, why am I not doing better? Why do I keep doing this? Why am I always late? Why am I always keeping everything so chaotic in my house? I don't like to have people over because my house or my car is always a mess. Why am I always missing deadlines at work? Why am I always overeating? And then, I'm upset because I've gained weight. And why am I not doing the things I want to do? And the opposite, doing things that I don't want to do constantly. That can really do a number, on your self-esteem and your mental state. Chronic emotional dysregulation, so difficulty managing your mood and your emotions. This impacts relationships, definitely impacts your mental health just as an individual when you feel like it's a roller coaster. You never know from day to day, mood swings, having a hard time navigating stressful situations, or when you find yourself embarrassed, when you find yourself sad, and next thing you know, you're having the ruminating thoughts. You're trying to solve the problem. You can't solve the problem. And you're deeply stressed out. And then, you're having trouble finding the motivation to get up and get out and get out of bed, or to focus on something else, or to show up in the other areas of your life that you need to, with presence and intention, because you're preoccupied with, your dysregulated emotions. Stimming and fidgeting, so nail biting, tapping your fingers, twirling your hair, biting your cheek, tapping your leg is another one I do, like, bouncing your leg a lot. Drawing and doodling, needing to like grab or touch, any like body part repeatedly, humming, constantly clearing your throat, even like, what I keep doing, like the pushing the glasses up or whatever. Just different things you do to kind of center yourself, to regulate yourself. Sometimes it's for comfort. A lot of times it's unconscious. You're not even realizing you're doing it. It's just become a repetitive habit. That can also be a sign of autism spectrum disorder, something that, people who are neurodivergent do. It doesn't mean you have autism. So, just know that there's a lot more that needs to be assessed aside from that. But that's just, something that you'll commonly see with people who have autism spectrum disorder. Hypersensitivity to your environment, and a tendency toward being experiencing like an overload of your senses. So if you're sensitive to smells, you're very sensitive to temperature, you're sensitive to light and dark and certain fabrics and the texture of food, the texture of material or clothing even, certain tastes, can kind of really freak you out. Definitely like a lot of noise. If you can't handle a bunch of noise, overstimulating environments, like I said, so there being a lot of people around, there's a lot of chatter, and there's a baby crying, and there's, the TV's on, and someone's in the kitchen blending up a smoothie, and your kid's like, mom, and, next thing you know, you like want to go crazy. It's like your head's going to pop off. You're overstimulated. That doesn't happen to everybody. But if you are dealing with neurodivergence, it's possible that that is something that like can send you into shutdown, because it's just too much for your brain to handle and process at one time. Having executive functioning issues like learning disorders and just general difficulties with poor attention, lack of attention to detail, forgetting things, being easily distracted. We kind of have talked about that. So those things are tied into what's called executive functioning. So when you have difficulty with that, you'll experience a lot of what I've talked about in terms of remembering things, following through, not misplacing things, organizing, planning, managing tasks. Being a perfectionist and having high expectations for yourself, which can send you into depression or freeze or overwhelm very easily. And you can feel like you feel ashamed because you're not meeting your own standards, because you're not doing it perfect, because you messed up. I know sometimes I'll cook, and if I mess up a recipe, or if I really wanted something to come out perfect and it didn't, I'm like so upset and so hard on myself. Like, I messed up the chicken again. How could I, burn the brownies? How could, I meant to call so-and-so before the day was over, before it was 5 o'clock and the office closed, and I didn't. And I told myself I was going to do it, and I didn't, and I forgot, and I'm so upset, with myself. Again, it can become really, especially dangerous when you are turning all this disappointment and negative energy and judgment on yourself. Because we can be our own worst critics. And of course, our relationships are mirrors. So if we're hard on ourselves, we're not giving grace and compassion and love to ourselves, it's likely that we will be drawn to creating relationships with people who also don't do that, who also, like us, may struggle with regulating their own internal state and their own emotions and their own mental health. So if you're not giving it to yourself and they can't give it to you, then you're just going without. And again, that creates another cycle of unhealthy relationships. Which again we'll get more into later. Impulsivity, so blurting stuff out, not filtering what you say, oversharing, so saying stuff that maybe you wish you wouldn't have said, but in the moment you just couldn't help yourself. Talking excessively, so like rambling, going on a rant, not being aware that you're doing it, dominating a conversation where you're not really giving the other person a chance to talk, talking too fast. So some people have described it as feeling like, your mouth can't keep up with the words going through your head. It's like there's a teleprompter in your head and you can't say the words fast enough. So other people have a hard time, following you or understanding you because you're talking so fast. Feeling like you need to speak your mind, but maybe not exercising tact or discernment on, is the setting and the timing appropriate for you to do so. That can be another sign of some ADHD that you're dealing with. Let's see. Hyperactivity, that's one I think, there are no boy or girl symptoms. Anyone can have any symptom. I think that's more typically observed in like young boys, especially, when they're children. And a lot of times you'll also see boys, as they grow older, their symptoms improve. So maybe they needed medication when they were kids, but as they get into their teen years and their adult years, they may not need it. They may be able to better manage their ADHD symptoms, or they've calmed down a lot. So hyperactivity is not one that you necessarily see as much with women, especially when they're masking, because they learn that that's kind of socially not acceptable. But where I think it ends up rerouting itself is, like I was talking earlier about being a busybody. So maybe you're not bouncing off the walls, but you're like always on the go, always working on something. Like, oh, you got a new business? Oh, you done bought a new car, a new house, you're taking another trip, you're doing this, you're doing that. You're back in school, you're building a house, you're adopting a child, like, just Always doing something, you know. Um, so another one is being repeatedly victimized and enduring repeated trauma. So if you have experienced a lot of maltreatment in your personal and familial relationships, um, it's something to look at because, again, like you're used to being hard on yourself, you're used to feeling like you're not good enough, something's wrong with you. We all have an inner critic, this voice, this nasty voice, if you will, that's in us that tells us when we've messed up. You know, you should do better. That doesn't look good on you. You know, you're fat. You're stupid. You're nobody likes you. They don't want to be your friend. You know, just the nasty voice that kicks in that we all have, and for some people it's louder than others. Definitely tends to be loud in people who are struggling with their mental health or neurodivergence. So and when, like I said, things are amiss inside you and you're highly critical of yourself and maybe you're not treating yourself that well, it's very easy to find yourself in relationships with people who don't treat you well either. And maybe it started in childhood. Maybe your parents, didn't recognize what you were struggling with. A lot of our parents did. And as a result, you've gotten accustomed to being dismissed, being told you're too sensitive, or someone making demands of you to stop doing a thing or to start doing a thing that you really, really struggled with, and no one wanted to give you grace. No one, they thought you were making excuses. They thought you were just lazy or just messy or, whatever. And it, made you feel bad about yourself. And as a result of that, you can find yourself being repeatedly victimized as well, where it always seems like someone's doing something to you, someone's always treating you bad, someone's always, betraying you, stabbing you in the back, hurting you. Again, it's just difficulty managing relationships all around, and that's the kind of stuff I definitely want to talk about, teach about how to better manage that, how to overcome that, how to identify it, first, and then how to get out of that cycle, and how to manage that better. There is hope. There are things you can do, but you have to be aware that that's what's going on. So that's the first step, is to kind of zoom out and look at everything from a bird's eye view and not from the first person perspective of this keeps happening to me, but get in the observer mode and see, okay, what themes and patterns do we see here across, work, home, family life, in friendships, what patterns are playing out, what beliefs are present here, what are you experiencing repeatedly over the years in different relationships with people who don't even know each other, but you're the common denominator. And it's not to say that you are causing it directly, but there's a component, there's a part that you play, and it may be that it comes down to how you view yourself and how you're energetically showing up in your relationships. It may be how you're treating yourself, that's modeling to other people how to treat you. It may even be in the people you're choosing. You may subconsciously be choosing people that are going to treat you poorly because that's what you're accustomed to. That's what's familiar to you. You may be turned off by people who would actually treat you good if you met them. They may feel boring. They may feel like not a match. You don't feel sparks. You don't feel chemistry. Whatever. You're subconsciously drawn to drama. So, and I say this, to raise awareness, not to blame you, not to say that it's, intentional or make it something else for you to beat yourself up about. It's more something to become aware of. And as you become aware of it, you can pause and say, you know what? I know what this is. This is that thing again popping up, and I want to intentionally do things differently this time. I know this is the process I normally go through when I make decisions on who I'm going to date or be friends with or type of job I'm going to take or whatever. But I want to intentionally do the opposite, or I want to intentionally do something different here because I want a different outcome than what I'm used to getting. So, the awareness there is definitely key. Substance use and abuse. So we talked about self-medicating with drugs, alcohol, Even, sex, you can self-medicate with sex, and the endorphins that get released there, with serial relationships. So like you're always with somebody, never single for long, um, engaging in risky sexual behavior or impulsive behavior. um, it kind of ties into the impulsive buying, or just engaging in things that may not be wise or smart, but you're kind of just like doing it without thinking big picture. And then maybe later, when you're not in the moment, you're sitting back and you're like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have bought that. I shouldn't have um, made this decision, or I shouldn't have been with that person, or I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have whatever. But you had a hard time pausing and reflecting and using your discernment and practicing like self control and the ability to regulate that urge in the moment. We talked about masking, and sleep difficulties is another one. So if you struggle to sleep, stay asleep, have restful sleep, I know I'm someone who struggles with that. That could also point to deficiencies in like your body, like a magnesium deficiency, vitamin D, is always a big one, especially if you are of a darker complexion, or if you are indoors a lot, or if you're in a place where you don't get a lot of sunlight, if you're in a part of the country that doesn't get a lot of sunlight. So that can also affect your mood. You can get depression from low vitamin D, so that's always something to look at. I think most people end up finding out that they're deficient in vitamin D and need to supplement it in some way. But yeah, sleep difficulties is one. One that I found really interesting, that I actually heard a psychologist speaking about here on YouTube, was hypersensitivity to rejection. She called it rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So, and especially in girls, this is commonly felt when you are feeling left out, not included, not good enough, not liked. You have a hard time handling feedback. So even if you're like at work and your boss is like, oh, this was great, I would just make these changes. And like, instead of you taking it and hearing that she thought you did great, all you hear was the critical comment that you felt like it was, and you feel like a failure. It's like devastating, deeply upsetting to you. You don't handle any sort of criticism well. You constantly feel judged. You have this chronic fear of disappointing others or letting them down, hard time managing conflict, and are constantly comparing yourself with other people. So imagine how that impacts your relationship skills when you're maybe overly sensitive. Now, I'm someone who identifies as a highly sensitive person, and I know I'm sensitive, and I hate when people tell me I'm too sensitive, but I think we can set our own barometer for what's too sensitive. Like, you don't want to get derailed or thrown off or sent into a depression over just one interaction with someone where they said something you didn't like, or something that maybe if you step back and look at it is minor, or where you're filling in the blanks. Maybe if someone didn't include you in an invitation that they extended to other people, or if they didn't call you back, they didn't invite you to dinner, a guy you went out on a date with didn't ask you out a second time, like you're taking it deeply, deeply personally, and devastated over it, when maybe your level of investment shouldn't be as high as it is, and that's leading to it affecting you in a very deep way that maybe you don't even like. So that's all I have for now, and I think that's plenty. I'm really curious to know if you've watched this far. Thank you. We're at about an hour. and went a little longer than I planned to, but I'm glad I said everything. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting, so maybe I'll add it to a follow-up video if I think of more. But like I said, I think that's plenty to chew on. Um, Definitely, I'm not a professional that can diagnose you. I'm not treating you. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm sharing some common symptoms and signs and things that I noticed in myself. And if you find that you identify with or any of it resonates with you, what that I've shared today, um, maybe it's worth looking into, getting assessed. Um, Only a professional can officially diagnose you. And like I said, depending on your state, it may just be through a series of questions that they ask you or that you self report on. Um, you also may, if you desire medication, have to do some further testing as well. Um, but I believe there's also lots of online assessments that you can take where, based on how you score, they could tell you the likelihood that you might be dealing with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or other mental health issues. So, but definitely, this impacts every area of your life. It impacts how you are with your family, your friends. Relationships are, super important to our lives. And if it's impacting you in one area, it's probably impacting you everywhere. Even if you are successful, even if you are, because, that's my dynamic. I focus on helping high achieving women. So you may have an advanced degree, you may have your own business, you may have, a thriving career, and maybe you're a homeowner, maybe you um, are a business owner, or you have a lot of accolades, you've done a lot of things you're proud of. And it's not to say that having ADHD or any sort of neurodiverse condition or disorder can stop you from achieving those things. Obviously, that's not the case. There are a lot of people who have ADHD who are highly creative, highly successful entrepreneurs. Same for autism, because there's a spectrum. You can be, as they call, and I don't think it's the politically correct term anymore, but like high functioning, where it's not as easy to look at your life and suspect that maybe you are struggling with this, but it's more about the private battle. It's more about what you're dealing with internally, your stress levels, your mental state, how much energy you're having to expend on a daily basis just to manage your life, how you're talking to yourself, how you're seeing yourself, um, your emotional state, and how easy or difficult it is for you to stabilize and to feel okay and to not be on this roller coaster of emotions. Um, and those are more private things. You may not share that with other people. Like I said, I made it through grad school. I think back and I don't know how I did, but I did it, and I don't know, if I could do it again now, but I made it through. But it definitely took a lot of effort. I pulled a lot of all-nighters. I did a lot of last minute work, and it was stressful. And I can say that had I known that I had ADHD, had I had the proper supports and resources in place, it might have been easier for me. And that's the whole point of knowing is hopefully you have compassionate, caring people around you who will support you and understand and find it interesting and helpful to know, that that's what you're dealing with, and they will support you in getting, the help that you need. But it's for you. It's so that you know what's going on. You understand yourself better. Um, you understand that you're not flawed, that you're not a bird brain, you're not ditzy, you're not stupid, you're not, a bad friend, wife, daughter, mom, employee, whatever, because you struggle with certain things, and that you start seeking out that community and the appropriate resources and support to make your life easier is the overall goal, and not just to make it easier, but more enjoyable. Because when things are really hard for us, it's hard to sit back and smell the roses and enjoy, you know, when you're just fighting so hard just to get by every day. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. If there was anything I shared that really resonated with you or that particularly stood out, I'd love to hear about it. I will, reply to your comments. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to ask. I'm, really open to sharing and talking about this topic. I'm really passionate about it, and I believe there are a lot of women out there, men too, but women who need to have this discussion and who will benefit from having this discussion. So like I said, I'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you will tune in to my other videos, and in my bio on my page, I think I'll put it in the description too, I do have a community. It is focused on relationship coaching and life coaching. I recently made a pivot to working with women who have some sort of neurodivergence or some challenge that they're dealing with, that they look at the world a little differently. Their brain processes things a little differently. So not just ADHD, but any one of the neurodiverse disorders, and helping them navigate life. Though they're high achieving, they want to be high achieving in relationships too, and that's often an area of struggle. So but I will share information not just on relationships in those groups, but just information in general. So whether you're single, in a relationship, married, divorced, looking, not looking, I'd love to have you. You can find the link to that group in my link tree, or you can just type in your address bar lovemeetslogic.com, and you'll find the Facebook group. Subscribe to the channel so you can see any of my future videos, and also watch some of my older videos. I don't talk as much about the connection with the neurodivergence and relationships because that's more recent, but I still have some other really great videos because I've been a student of relationships for a long time, something I studied in college and then a lot outside of school. And also, personal experience, and, working with other women and learning from their experiences as well, and other great coaches and teachers and mental health professionals, and, all that in this industry. I've been a student of a lot of them. So, I would love to connect with you, love to hear more about your story, help you if I can, if that's something you're looking for. If not, just, be supportive, be a friend, be a cheerleader for you, and create a community where everyone can feel seen and loved and not alone, and find their tribe, and add to the happiness of their life. So with that, I am going to get ready to head to bed, but I love you all. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.